Hi everybody, thank you for coming to this last session of the day, and I really hope you've enjoyed the London Summit this year. There's been some great presentations, and I particularly like the chaos engineering one by Adrian, one of my colleagues. So I'm Rick Harvey. I'm the UK and Ireland Technical Developer Evangelist. That means I get to stand in front of you guys a lot and talk to you about some of the cool stuff we're doing, some of the stuff we've been doing for a long time, like storage. And I get to listen to you and take all your feedback and feed that back into our product teams and hopefully shape the product in the way you want. If you've ever seen the amount of releases and updates that AWS does throughout a year, that's all driven by customer feedback. So we really want to hear from you. So reach out to us on Twitter, drop us emails. My email is rjh@amazon.com. Nice, easy one to remember. If you want to see something change, you want a new product, you've got problems, I can put you in touch with people, I can take that feedback and feed it into our team. So please do reach out and speak to us. So I'm going to talk to you today about storage and data migration. There's a little bit of edge processing in there. I know the title was different outside. I was hoping to get a Snowball edge in to do some demos, but we couldn't actually get a hold of one. They're all out with customers at the moment. So I'm going to go through this and show you what you can do with storage on AWS. So we've got a couple of predictions to start with. 160 zettabytes of data by 2025 by IDC. That's a massive amount of data. But then Cisco go and dwarf that. They say 847 zettabytes of data every year by 2021. These are huge volumes of storage, and building that on-prem is very, very expensive because you need replication, you need redundancy, you need a disaster recovery site, you've got to replicate this storage and have multiple copies of it. It's expensive, it's cumbersome, it's big. And adopting cloud has helped people move data and have better resiliency and durability to that data. And we're going to go through a few of the products we've got today that help do that, and we're going to talk about some of the partner products as well. So, data in the Gravity as cloud. People are either building natively in the cloud or they migrate. We're all aware of this concept. It's not new, it's not groundbreaking. The data is the key bit in all of these applications that we build, whether it be a database, whether it be flat file storage, whether it be a lot of images or video assets. In my time, I've worked with large video asset data sets, roughly about 25 petabytes worth of data we tried to migrate into AWS, well before Snowball existed and Direct Connect, all into S3. And that was quite a task. It used to be a case where you bought a bunch of USB disks, you put a file on there, you copied all your work onto that disk, you packaged them up, you sent them off to Amazon, someone plugged them in the data center and it got sucked into S3, they sent you the disk back, you start the process again, because 25 petabytes worth of USB hard disks isn't going to happen easy. Well, luckily today, it's a lot easier now. We've got things like Snowball, which we'll talk about in a bit. So once the data's in the cloud, realizing the benefits really comes in. It's cheaper. You're not having to manage not only buying those disks, you're not paying for power into those racks. You're not paying for space in a data center. You're not paying for cooling, remote hands. We've all had services where disks have gone out and someone turns up with a new disk. It's expensive. So you can eliminate all these costs and that undifferentiated heavy lifting, and we can look after that for you. And because this frees your time up, you can deliver new insights. You can look into some of the plug-in products we have. Data lakes, for example. Going through your data, analyzing it, processing it. You've freed up a lot of time. You've got a lot of flexibility, and your data is close next to this elastic workforce you have of either EC2, EMR, whatever you choose to process your data. And we find this tends to accelerate innovation with our customers. Once the data is in the cloud, you can focus on improving your product. You can add all these extra features. QuickSight, for example, for analyzing data that you've got stored on S3. You can use ETL with AWS Glue and transform data and move it on the fly. S3 plugs into other products such as Lambda. So as soon as a file lands on S3, you can trigger a function off to go and do something with that file. Whether it be something really, really simple, like uploading an image and creating a thumbnail version of that image and storing it next to it, you can do that. And there's no extra bits you've got to go away and build. There's no extra servers to install. There's no extra disks to do. There's no complicated networking. You can just consume this. We have a lot of large-scale customers who use this. NASA, Toyota. The NASA one's quite interesting. It was one of the first use cases I ever saw with using S3 for video processing outside the job I was doing. This was quite a long time ago. This was back at the very first reInvent, and they had a really, really, really cool presentation about the Mars rover. And when they sent the Mars rover up, a lot of the videos and images were sent back into NASA first and then into S3 for storage and consumption on the website by us, the general public. And it was a great use case. It was fantastic. You could watch live videos very, very quickly from Mars. Well, obviously there's a speed of light and transmission problem there, but relatively quickly. As soon as it hit Earth, it was into S3. So what are the common workloads of data on AWS? Most of us start off with backup and recovery. We'll take snapshots of our databases. We'll copy large amounts of assets up into S3, store them there. Archiving that data. It used to be everyone had a tape drive and a tape robot and boxes and boxes of tape, and some tape you had to remember to take home if you was a sysadmin. So if the building burnt down, you could restore everything. These are built in. We've got Amazon Glacier, which plugs into S3, and using lifecycle policies, I can automatically say, after 50 days, move my data out of S3 and archive it into a cheaper class of storage in Glacier. And the cost savings are pretty significant. We'll touch on that in a little bit. If you saw the keynote with Werner, you'll see that data lakes on AWS. We have a lot of data lakes, a lot of customers storing huge amounts of data in things like S3 and then consuming that by other AWS services or Hadoop clusters that they've built and put in into EC2. Compliance. If you're in a heavy regulated industry, you have to store data for a very long time, and you have to be careful how that data is stored. You've got to make sure it's replicated or kept in a specific region, and that data is there for years to come in case somebody comes knocking on the door and asks for that data back to check out what you were doing at a particular time. Storage for database and analytics. There's lots of ways to put this in. Hadoop workloads, bespoke database lift and shifts by either moving SQL dumps into S3 first and then consuming that in RDS. You can also look at CSV files and text files and use other AWS services to directly pull that and analyze that via S3 without moving data about. And then we've got enterprise applications, so stuff we're all used to. Mail servers or a web server with a shared storage under the back end, so the files are replicated across multiple web servers. We've got EBS, Elastic Block Storage, and this is a thing that connects into your EC2 instance and is persistent storage. And then we've got EFS, which is Elastic File System, and this is used to be a network storage device, basically. Replicating a SAN is the best way to describe that. So why would you use AWS as storage services is a real question. And we say our reliability and our level of nines of durability is one of the key features. When you copy an object into S3, for example, I mention S3 a lot because it's one of my favorite services. I'm a bit of an S3 geek, so I apologize here. So when you move data into S3, it's replicated in all three availability zones within a region, and it stays within that region. You can also optionally configure to have that data replicated to another geographic region by a couple of clicks of a button. So it's super easy to have this reliability of storage. It's secure. We have multiple ways of warning you if a bucket is been made public. We've got things like Amazon Macy that came out, which is a machine learning platform that analyzes the data as you put it in and will categorize it. If it thinks the content of that data is sensitive, it will automatically block access to it until you tell it, no, it's all right, you can give this to the general public. So things like Macy have really started changing the game with storing large amounts of data in. When you move data into the cloud, you need to do a few things. You need to categorize it. You need to say what level of sensitivity that data's got. Is it public consumable data? Is it private or is it critical? Can no one ever get hold of this, even within my organization, unless I grant access? So you need to categorize this data before you move it. And that's kind of like step one before you move data. We've got a huge portfolio of different things that plugs in that we're going to talk to in a minute. And there's a lot of ways to get that data into the cloud as well, which we are going to talk about. And we've got a lot of partners who integrate with this. So I know there's someone in here whose organization uses NetApp, for example, and they had on-prem NetApps, and then they ran cloud on tap, and they basically linked them together using snap mirrors, and the data was migrated into AWS really, really easy. Lots and lots of partners within that. And then we've got lots of support and training and partners who will do support and training as well. So let's look at the building blocks a little bit here. We're talking about block storage, file storage, and object storage, and then archiving that object storage. And then we've got different ways of moving data into the cloud. Let's look at this in a little bit more of an AWS-specific way. So block storage, we've got Amazon EBS. This is your virtual hard disk you attach to the EC2 instances you use. And for just purely storing files, we've got the EFS system, which is an NFS-compliant file system that you can connect into your Windows or Linux boxes relatively simply. And then we've got Amazon S3, which is an object storage. All the objects you put into S3 are indexed, and there's some really good guides if you look at some of the white papers about how to get maximum performance. But on its own, S3 is hugely concurrent. You can have that particular file pulled out by lots of people at the same time. And it really, really integrates with a lot of other products, Glacier being one for archival storage. But if you wanted to serve your website, your static website from S3, you can. And you can link it in with CloudFront. And CloudFront will move that content closer to your edge users. Let's look at data movement a second. So up here we've got AWS Storage Gateway. Has anyone used this product? No, not many people. So I've used it in the past a couple of times. Storage Gateway is a virtual appliance that you typically run on-premise. You can run it within EC2 if you want to. We typically run this on-premise, and it acts as a gateway between the services at the back end, so things like EBS and S3 and virtual tape drive, and it gives a standards compliant way of connecting in, whether that be Windows file shares or NFS, to your applications that are on-prem. Your applications on-prem, treat it as a normal volume, write data to it, and then that data gets basically cached locally and then also sent up to AWS and stored on AWS. So it can be a really good way of like starting to move your data over to AWS. When everything's copied, you can then shut it down and move your workloads across. Kinesis Firehose, we've got this one here because taking big data streams of a lot of information coming in all at the same time and then archiving it over to things like S3, it's an incredibly powerful way of collecting lots of information at the same time. And then we've got EFS File Sync, which is a way to sync your files between different EFS deployments you may have. Amazon S3 Transfer Acceleration. Now this is quite cool. So if you're using S3 now, but you're transferring a lot of data, your endpoint will go to the default endpoint for S3. But just by changing one line of text in your upload or on your command on your CLI, you can pick a regional endpoint. And I believe there's 59 endpoints that you can pick that uses the AWS global infrastructure. You then send your data to that global endpoint, which is quicker because you're closer to it. Obviously, don't pick one over the other side of the world. You pick your local one and send it to that. And then using our network protocols and our fiber backbone, that data is sent as quickly as possible to where your S3 bucket is created. So it speeds up transfers quite significantly. I think we've seen between 50 and 500% improvement depending on types of files and workloads. We've then got third-party applications, and there's companies like Veritas who do backup into things like S3 as well. And then we've got the AWS Snow family, which I'll talk to you about very, very shortly. And then on the security and the management side of that data, we've got KMS. I'm going to start at the bottom on this one. KMS is a key management service, and it's a way of managing keys and encrypting data. With S3, you can switch on by default. You can go in and switch on for a particular bucket that you want all your data to be encrypted at rest. So as it hits and is written to disk, it's encrypted. And in the background, what we're doing there is some pretty cool stuff with, we have a master key for your account, but then we'll generate a key for that particular bucket or key where you're uploading to. And the data will be encrypted. The key will be encrypted with a master key and stored along with the data. So you need to get hold of two keys if you want to unencrypt that data. It's very hard. KMS can augment this, and you can do things like bringing your own keys along as well. What else have we got? IAM controls for who can access that data, who can delete those volumes. One thing you can do with S3 is if somebody tries to delete an object out your bucket and you want to make sure that's not deleted, you can enable through IAM MFA tokens. So when they delete it, so they've not done it by accident, they have to type in their MFA token off their Gemalto key. It's a good safeguard and failure on there. CloudTrail, every API call is logged into CloudTrail, so you've got nice auditing. So if you're an enterprise and highly regulated again, you've got this audit trail of who's been accessing files, who's been modifying those systems. You can create all this with CloudFormation, and then we've got things like Lambda as well for managing data. Like I said, when you upload a file into S3, you can have a Lambda trigger automatically, and you can do something else with this data if you wish. It might be you choose to analyze that data and make sure that it complies to your standards that you've set. So you can do some automatic learning from that. Amazon QuickSight to show you analytics on top of these. And then Amazon Macy, which I've mentioned already, which is the ML platform. So I mentioned partners. There's many. There's many. NetApp, SoftNAS I've used before, Veritas for backups, HP and Dell also have tools for going in there, and there's lots of ways to move data from existing systems into AWS. We have lots of training and support on this as well, and escalation systems within AWS through your account managers, and we can work with you to do particular customization to get data in there, so you can have ProServe come and help with data migrations, for example. Okay, let's look at some of the things we've got to store data on AWS in a little bit more detail. We'll start with Amazon S3. So, anyone seen these before? The Gartner Magic Quadrants? So, Amazon Web Services right up there. This is our status of ability to deliver and innovation on the storage platform. And we're quite a long way up. That's good to be up in that corner. It's really good. And part of this is because we've got reliability, and we've got a huge amount of storage. There are trillions of objects in S3 worldwide. Trillions of objects. I mean, it's a mind-boggling number when you start looking at it, and it's growing constantly every day. So S3, it's unmatched durability within any cloud offering. There's lots of nines when you start looking at the SLAs, and this is part of the thing because it's it's replicated between 3 availability zones. Now, availability zones aren't next door to each other. They're not shared racks. They're not a rack next door to each other. They're buildings that are miles apart. So the likelihood of 2 of them going out or 3 of them going out at the same time is very, very, very rare. You can store, collect, and analyze on here, and it's built for backups, data lakes, and analysis, log storage as well. It's also a common use case for S3. So, S3 types. We've got S3 standard. That's the thing where you pay 2.3 cents a gigabyte a month for storage. Incredibly cheap storage. And this is the standard access. If you're not accessing that data frequently, you're not making a lot of calls to S3, you can drop it down and save money by going to 1.25 cents a gigabyte a month by moving to the infrequent access tier. Same durability, same reliability, it just you don't access that data as much. And it's quite easy to use lifecycle policies to actually move that data from standard into infrequent access, and then eventually into Glacier. If you're not accessing it at all, archive it for compliance reasons. So Glacier, highly secure. The best way to use Glacier is create a big bundle of data that you want to push at one time, and archive that up and make it go into Glacier. When you want that data back, you make a call, and within a few hours, that data is restored into an S3 bucket for you. It's really, really handy for compliance. When you have lots and lots of logs, the cost savings of pushing into Glacier is even cheaper than the infrequent access, so it'll save you even more money there. So S3 and Glacier durability. My slide's gone a bit crazy there. Now, there's 4 nines durability, but if you then choose to have it copied onto multiple sites, you can go to 5 nines durability if you do it yourself. That's the best you're going to get, but that's expensive. You've got to have twice the kit. It's going to cost you a lot of CapEx expenditure. Whereas if you go and use S3, we've got all these 9s for our durability here. It's a huge amount. And we've got S3 standard, S3 infrequent access, and Glacier. And they all share that 99.999999% durability. Now, we've just recently brought in as well S3 infrequent access 1 zone. So if you've got data that isn't critical and you don't need it replicated throughout all 3 availability zones, you can make up to savings of 1/5 from S3 IA by just putting data in 1 availability zone in a region. And you still get all the 9s durability. It's just the availability that is the differentiating here. So, object storage, and this is what we like to do. We don't lock that data just into a single region, a single data center. It's in multiple data centers, and we definitely don't split it on a rack and store the data next to each other. So let's have a look at some use cases. I'm really going to just touch on data lakes here because it's one of the nicest sets of use cases we've got. There are plenty of others. I know people in here have used S3 for building entire websites and fronting and then linking with Lambda and doing some really cool stuff like that. Image processing as well. So Alert Logic are down in the hall, one of our partners. So they've basically moved 25 petabytes of customer data, and that's growing 110% a year. It was hard to do themselves. They had lots of problems. Colo wasn't cutting it for them, so they needed to go to cloud scale and leverage the infrastructure and the global infrastructure that AWS can provide. So when they moved that, they found that they reduced costs. They avoided a 1.6 million capex of infrastructure that are needed for this amount of data. And it's less than 1.7 cents per gig per month when they use all their different methods for pushing in. So it's incredibly cheap. And they've got around a few other things as well. They've got 4 times better I/O per dollar ratio than if they'd have built it themselves. So these systems are fast, and this is the thing with concurrency, really concurrent. Protect-wise as well, also built a data lake on Amazon S3. Huge amounts of data they wanted to put in, and they had a quite interesting use case where they could roughly save about 30% than doing it on traditional disks. So let's talk about block storage quickly. EBS block storage. This is the virtual disk you connect to your instance. Persistent storage. It's reliable and performant. There's a few little things you can do. So a EBS volume, when it's created, is locked in a particular availability zone within the region. If you need to copy that and move it to another region, you just snapshot it. Snapshots are available throughout all regions, and then you recreate that disk in another region. Very, very easy to do. So you've got these inbuilt backup tools that's built into this product as well. Use cases for this are things like databases and data stores, or archive for Hadoop, for example. So the use case that we've got here is Viasat, and they move 17 terabytes of daily device data at 200 megasecond, and they cut their storage cost by 25%, pushing this onto EBS, and they could still process it in the same way they was used to. They didn't have to redesign any system. They just moved to cloud storage. And the resync times dropped to 20 minutes as well from 8 hours every time they did this data refresh. EFS is our NFS equivalent. It's a lot easier to use something like EFS rather than trying to build a solution yourself. I've built in the past for customers solutions where we built a Gluster FS solution. We had to have multiple EBS volumes in each availability zone and replicate that, and then link them all together and do data syncing ourselves. And if we wanted to take backups, we used to have to manage backups ourselves. EFS comes out and it removes all that heavy lifting for you. It is a system that's backed up. You can attach multiple machines to it. Replication's taken care of for you. So it's very, very simple. It grows as much as you use it. So you throw more data in, you can have it grow. And it's got a much, much lower cost, total cost of ownership than doing it yourself. Like I say, doing it yourself, you're running at least 3 EC2 instances, and then however many EBS volumes you need to attach to it, times 3. So EFS use cases. This one's pretty cool. So SiriusXM, they had a problem to solve in 90 days. They needed to integrate and ship a new partner streaming device. And they considered doing it themselves, using NFS on AWS, and realized that they were not going to hit this deadline in 90 days. So they started looking at EFS. They evaluated EFS and they deployed EFS. It took them 2 hours. So they hit that 90-day deadline very, very, very quickly and easily. Here a world leader in location mapping technology. They use EFS to store a lot of their data. They moved to EFS, and they eliminated all that management and workload of managing the systems themselves as well. They had a 38% better performance than their old DIY system. And it took them, instead of taking them 3 months to set up new archives like it used to, it took them 1 week. So they saved a huge amount of time by letting us do the heavy lifting for them and supplying the infrastructure. Right, so this comes into the last bit of this talk really, which is how do you get your data in? And there's some pretty cool products on this. So moving data to the cloud, we all kind of understand why we want to move there. Productivity, cost effectiveness, agility in your business, and the resilience. But moving that data can cause huge amounts of pain points. And some of that can be because it's disruptive. You've got to take your old storage offline and then do a switch over to the new one, and you've got to make sure it's all in sync. And did I remember to copy that set of files across? Oh, I don't know. So that's quite difficult. The speed of doing it, if you've got huge amounts of data sets, the speed of moving that data into the cloud used to be difficult. You was often limited by your own WAN connection, and the cost of that data being transferred as well. So we brought in a few different things. We started to say, what kind of data have you got and where's it going? Is this going to be a one-time event, or is it going to be continuous movement? Because this is going to help you choose which product you want to use. Is it only going into the cloud, or is it coming back out as well? Do we need to do data transfer both ways? And how much data and time do you have? And how might your WAN be a factor on this? So we start looking at some of the ways of migrating data in. Things to look at and do some of these analytics and decide about your data. AWS Migration Hub will help you on that one, and the application discovery service can help you discover where all your data sets are in your system and how you may want to move those across. We also have database migration services as well, and VMware with bare metal instances. But let's start first of all talking about the Snow family. So the Snow family is a big grey box. I'll talk about this more in a couple of slides. Big grey box that is shipped out to you. You plug into your network, you have the data sucked onto it, and then you unplug it, send it back, and the data is moved into AWS. Really pretty cool. And if you've got a lot of data, and I mean a lot of data you need to move, you can get one of these things that's basically a lorry that pulls up outside your building, parks, big cables are plugged into your data center, and then the data is transferred into a lorry that's then driven back to AWS and transferred back. And I don't have the slide, I couldn't find it, but there's a really cool picture where you can see it on Google Earth. It's that big. You can see this thing parked outside somebody's data center, ingesting data for them. Storage Gateway I've mentioned already. Kinesis Firehose I've talked about. AFS File Sync lets you move from on-premise to cloud very, very easy by keeping the original data source and EFS in sync with each other. And then we've got our partners who help with this as well. And then the last one, which I've not spoke about yet really, is AWS Direct Connect. And this is a lease line, for want of a better word, that is in your, that's plugged into your infrastructure, and you can send data direct to AWS. Direct Connect terminates in your own VPC, so all the traffic is private, and then you can control it through your firewall mechanisms as normal. So let's go a little bit deeper on a couple of these. Snowball, petabyte scale storage. Snowball Edge is really, really cool. So it's effectively got an M4 4XL instance built into it, and you can run processing. So when the data goes onto it, if that data needs to go through some transformational process or extra types of encryption, you can write the code and make that happen. It runs on that device that turns up at your data center. Really, really cool, very fast networking, and you ship it back off, and the data is then ingested into AWS. And then the Snowmobile at the end. This is that lorry I told you about that turns up. I think at the reInvent, when it was announced, they actually brought it onto stage. They wouldn't let me do that here. They were scared I'd probably run everybody over by doing it. So the Snow family, it's really simple to use. You create a job, which is in the console, and then we ship a Snowball to you. You plug the Snowball in, you copy the data to the Snowball and ship it back, and then that data is moved into S3 for you. Really, really simple process. Beats packing boxes and boxes of disks trying to move 25 petabytes of video data. Storage Gateway. You'll get these slides after as well, so the extra data you'll be able to, on here, you'll be able to go through. Supports tape, volume, and file types. Acts as an interface between AWS and any legacy applications you have. Firehose, capturing a lot of data, analyzing it maybe in real time in Kinesis, and then pushing it off to different data sources like S3 or Redshift, or even into Elasticsearch, can all be done through Kinesis Firehose. So it's a really cool way of getting data in from lots of systems that are spread out all over the world, mobile devices, for example. AFS File Sync, really, really easy to put on. It's kind of like an rsync for AFS. So if anyone's familiar with the rsync command, it's pretty cool. And then we have our partner network and migration services that they offer. Commvault, NetApp, and SoftNAS all have different ways of getting data in, and for different types of workload, whether it's backup or whether it's archival data or whether it's live data that needs to be processed. They've all got different ways to go in. Direct Connect comes in 1 gigabyte or 10 gigabyte connections. You have that put into your office, your data center, wherever you can get it. And then that data, you can transfer across that wire nice and fast. It's dedicated to you. So you're not competing with any other network traffic, trying to browse iPlayer or watch 4OD or shop on Amazon.com when everybody's supposed to be working and slowing the network down. I've mentioned S3 Transfer Accelerator, pretty cool, and I love S3, so this excites me. Basically, instead of uploading all the way from where you may be in your territory to an S3 bucket stored over in the US in this example, you actually upload to an S3 location, and then through our optimized networking protocols, we can transfer that data very, very quickly across our backbone into the destination. Some of the stats that come up with that is, you can see from this. This is 500 gigabyte uploads, and you can see the time taken in orange when you use the S3 transfer acceleration as compared to doing it over the public internet. So when your data gets larger and larger and larger, you can really see that this is going to save you a significant amount of time. And that's it for my sessions today. So I really hope you enjoyed that. We'll get these slides out to you. Please do reach out to us if you want any more information on particular services, and we can hook you up with SAs or specialists, and it'll be great to get some of your feedback. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the summit, and see some of you later.